choices we offer in this? Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Sunday here at First Unitarian Society. And it's not just any Sunday, it's our first day of March, or as we also call it, the month of the month. And it is part of our leap year weekend as we leap into generosity and launch our stewardship campaign, and you'll hear about that a little bit later, right before the standing ovation. But, again, welcome to First Unitarian Society, where independent thinkers gather in a safe, nurturing environment to explore issues with social, spiritual, and ethical significance as we try to make a difference in this world. I'm Steve Goldberg, a proud, sweet-smelling member of this congregation, and I extend an extra warm welcome to any guests, visitors, or newcomers. If this is your first time at First Unitarian Society, I think you'll find that it's a very, very special place, and we invite you to join us during our fellowship hour after the service. And speaking of the service, this would be the perfect time to silence those pesky electronic devices that you absolutely will not need for the next hour, because instead of paying attention to your phone, you'll be paying attention to the service. A service that I know will touch your heart, stir your spirit, and trigger one or two new thoughts. We're really glad that you're here this morning, and I'd like to ask you to join in a moment of centering silence so we can be fully present with each other.
For our community gathered here, for the Spirit that called us together and drew us to this place, we give thanks this day.
For moments we have shared with others, for times when we have reached out across barriers of distance and fear, for times when others have reached out to us, for moments when we have discovered another along our path, we give thanks this day.
For this community of celebration and growth, introspection and solitude, and for those moments of that peace that passes all understanding, we give thanks this day.
For our gathering together out of distant places, for our weaving together out of many separate selves, this hour of celebration and worship, we give thanks this day. I invite us to rise in all the ways that we do and join our voices together as we read our words to spark our chalice, printed in your order of service. As together we say, O light of life, be kindled again in our hearts, as we meet together this morning
to celebrate the joy of human community, seeking a wholeness that extends beyond ourselves.
And now, if you will join us in singing hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit, the first and last verse.
Gather the Spirit, harvest the power. Our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once. Verse 3. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun. Winter in spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again.
Before you take a seat, I invite you to turn towards each other and offer a warm greeting. Warm.
Invite anyone who would like to come up closer for our story to come on up. Good morning. Hello. You too. Come on up. Ooh, where did it go? You're here too. Hello. Hello, hello. Hi, Winnie. What's in the box? That's our question. Yeah? Hey, so let's see. Do we have any guesses? It's not very heavy. A dragon? Somebody yesterday said a snake, and I had said if it was a snake, it would be very far over there. It's not a snake. It's not an animal. I can do this. Listen, it's not hard plastic. Oh, how'd you know? How did you know? It's a box of yarn. Oh, look at it. It's even there's so much yarn, it's falling out. It's a box of yarn. And you know why? Because our story today is called Extra Yarn. I love this one. Let's see what happens.
Sometimes I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. You haven't seen it before? Good, you're going to be surprised. On a cold afternoon in a cold little town, where everywhere you looked was either the white of snow or the soot of chimneys, Annabelle found a box filled with yarn of every color. So she went home and knit herself a sweater. And when Annabelle was done, she had some extra yarn. So she knit a sweater for Mars, too. But there was still extra yarn. And when Annabelle and Mars went for a walk, Nate pointed and laughed and said, "You two look ridiculous." "You're just jealous," said Annabelle. "No, I'm not," said Nate. But it turned out he was. And even after she'd made a sweater for Nate and his dog, and for herself and for Mars, she still had extra yarn. At school, Annabelle's classmates could not stop talking about her sweater. "Quiet!" shouted Mr. Norman. "Quiet, everyone! Annabelle, that sweater of yours is a terrible distraction. I cannot teach with everyone turning around to look at you." "Then I'll knit one for everyone," Annabelle said, "so they won't have to turn around." "Impossible," said Mr. Norman. "You can't." But it turned out she could, and she did. Even for Mr. Norman. And when she was done, Annabelle still had extra yarn. So she knit sweaters for her mom and dad, and for Mr. Pendleton and Mrs. Pendleton, and for Dr. Palmer, and for little Louis. She made sweaters for everyone, except Mr. Crabtree, who never wore sweaters or even long pants, and who would stand in his shorts with the snow up to his knees. "No sweater for me, please," said Mr. Crabtree. So she made Mr. Crabtree a hat. And even then, Annabelle still had extra yarn. She made sweaters for all the dogs, and all the cats, and for all the other animals, too. Yeah, like the bunny. And the bear. Soon, people thought, soon Annabelle is going to run out of yarn. But it turned out she didn't. So Annabelle made sweaters for things that don't even wear sweaters. She made a sweater for the house, and the birdhouse, and the mailbox, and the bird, and the dog. Things began to change in that little town. Are the only colors white snow and sooty black chimneys? No, it's pretty colorful now, huh? News spread of this remarkable girl who never ran out of yarn, and people came to visit from around the world to see all of the sweaters and to shake Annabelle's hand. One day, an archduke who was very fond of clothes sailed across the sea and demanded to see Annabelle. "Little girl," said the archduke, "I would like to buy that miraculous box of yarn, and I am willing to offer you $1 million. "No, thank you," said Annabelle, who was knitting a sweater for a pickup truck. The archduke's mustache twitched. $2 million, he said. Annabelle shook her head. "No, thanks." $10 million, shouted the archduke. "Take it or leave it." "Leave it," said Annabelle. "I won't sell the yarn." And she didn't. So that night, the archduke hired 3 robbers to break into Annabelle's house, and they stole the box and took it to the archduke, who set off across the snow and sailed over the sea back to his castle. The Archduke put on his favorite song and sat in his best chair. Then he took out the box and he lifted its lid and he looked inside. What do you think? You think there's going to be is there going to be yarn or is it going to be empty? Bum, bum, bum. It's empty. There's no yarn. His mustache quivered, it shivered, it trembled. The Archduke hurled the box out the window and shouted, "Little girl, I curse you with my family's curse. You will never be happy again." But, did you see the box? And then did you see the box here? Where do you think it's going? Across the water. Where do you think the box is going?
The waterfall.
To a waterfall? It could be. This book we don't have many pages left, so I don't think there's a scary part coming. Where do you think it's going to go? To the park? Who do you think the box is going back to? Annabelle! There she is. Do you see Annabelle and Mars? And here comes the box. What's going to happen when she opens it? Is it going to be empty? You think it's going to be empty? Oh, let's see what happens. So what was the Archduke's curse? You'll never be happy again, right? But it turned out she was. Look at all that. The tree, the bird, she looks pretty happy to me. And then our last page, look at that. 2 kitties and 2 dogs and a tree all covered in yarn. So what's the deal? Was it a magic box of yarn? No, right? Do you believe in does anybody believe in magic? No, I believe. Daphne? I believe in a certain kind of magic. So I think about people like your teachers. How many of you were in school with teachers? Right? Think about when you started school. Maybe you knew how to read, maybe you didn't. Maybe you knew how to count, maybe you didn't. Maybe you already had friends, maybe you didn't. Think about teachers, right? They help us learn how to read and how to count, how to feel safe, how to make friends. I think teachers are magic. I think you know how to count. Hi, Ray Ray. Hi. Do you want to see the yarn? I think about the place across the street. Do you think about the place? Do you know what's across the street? The Children's Hospital. And we go there if we're feeling sick, where something's wrong, and they help us get better. That's a certain kind of magic. And this place right here, we have our own kind of magic. Because you know what happens week after week, and month after month, and year after year? That no matter what is happening, when all of these people, do you see all these grown-ups in the room with you, and all of you, when we all come together in this place, a certain kind of magic happens. That we always have enough, and we always have more to share. And you all are a huge part of the magic of this place. And we are so very grateful that you're here. So, stay here with me for a second. Drew's going to sing a song with us where we get to clap. Are you ready to clap?
We're going to clap twice. Each time we clap. Can you go clap, clap? All right, so some of you may recognize this song, but we're all going to learn it together. If you don't pick it up the first time, just do the clapping. All right? I'll sing it first. You listen really closely. You shall go out with joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and the hills will break forth before you. There'll be shouts of joy, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands. Ready? And all the trees of the field will clap their hands. The trees of the field will clap their hands. The trees of the field will clap their hands while you go out with joy. You want to sing that with me as you go to your classes? You can sing and walk, right? And we'll sing with you. Here we go. A little bit faster, maybe. Ready? And you shall go out with joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and the hills will break forth before you. There'll be shouts of joy, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands. And all the trees of the field will clap their hands. The trees of the field will clap their hands. The trees of the field will clap their hands while you go out with joy.
So this weekend, as we move out of the theme of generosity, where we have explored all the various ways that that idea intersects with our lives, we move into a time where we invite you to think about one particular practice of generosity, thinking about how to best support this congregation moving into a search for a new minister and into a new era of life together. And we know from one of the common themes of the last month that one of the most sustainable ways that a community may be generous is by turning to a spirit of gratitude. And so our worship team thought about what you have told us in the past regarding what you are grateful for in this community. We each chose one of those themes we had heard many times that had a particular resonance with us to share with you. As always with this sort of service, to create as many places of connection for you as we move into this important time together. And so the area of gratitude that I had a particular resonance with had to do something that I experienced in great breadth and depth here at First Unitarian Society. Actually, in some ways, more of a breadth and depth than I have experienced in many of the congregations that I've served. And that is that you have so many opportunities and ways that you engage in spiritual development and in spiritual practice. I mean, just what we do over the weekend in and of itself is a major endeavor in all of that. And you have an amazing legacy in terms of the breadth and depth of what happens in worship and what happens in lifespan religious education. All of which ultimately invites you to that sense of spiritual depth, spiritual development, and we hope, spiritual practice. But there are so many other ways that you do that, so many rich and varied ways, from your centering prayer group and your Japanese crane meditation group and your insight Buddhist meditation and Thursday meditation, your book group that explores books of spiritual topics, and many, many experiences of small groups that help us connect with each other more deeply. Now, many of you have told me again and again that you credit some of that fervor and depth of spirituality from the time when Quest was a part of the programming of this congregation. And you tell me that wistfully because it is no longer actively a part of what happens as its own program. But I want to make sure you know today that Quest in its spirit and essence is very much alive in our programming and our intention in our exploration of spirituality. Almost all of the groups that I just listed came about either because people went through the Quest program or because of our greater awareness to foster those kinds of groups. And in so many of the ways that we do our religious education for adults and children, we are aware of our learnings from the Quest program. We make certain that, especially say in our journey circles, that we encourage people over a longer span of time to engage in deep conversations, to build a sense of community with each other that allows for them to share more openly what is deeply true in their own lives and to listen deeply to the truth of others, and to engage the themes of our monthly worship with more depth and more call for understanding of how it is alive in our own lives. And so we celebrate the strength of the spiritual growth programming here at First Unitarian Society. It is a shared ministry of spiritual development that is the core reason that really all communities of faith exist. And so as we go about engaging the body, the mind, and the heart in the most meaningful questions of life. It is a legacy to which our spirit of generosity on every level, whether it be time or talent or treasure, may be given to support both the present and the future together. In this time when so many people feel divided and alienated from each other, I celebrate that we hold space for a connection that unites us on the most core level of our humanity. In a time when our world is filled with such hateful anxiety, it is the opportunity for us to connect with the very heart of our being, and from that connection to find our enduring courage that matters so deeply. And in a time where so much of what surrounds us is full of clamor and distraction, in this place where we create space for quiet, and in that quiet, we may listen to the still small voice inside, the voice of conscience, the voice of reason, the voice of love. So for just a moment, I invite you to join us in a little exercise of that kind of openness and connection. I invite you to turn to 1009, or better yet, don't, because it's a very easy piece for us to do. Meditation on breathing. There are basically 3 parts, and each of us will sing one of those parts. You are welcome to listen or join, whatever the Spirit leads you to do, but for just a moment to connect with yourself, each other, with the Spirit of life itself. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When we sing, we breathe in peace and breathe out love every time we open our mouths. In Latin, the word ein is how it's correctly pronounced, can mean either in or into. And the into, the connotation there is that it is going from one to another. And the word spir, S-P-I-R, means either breath or spirit. So, to inspire literally means to take in a breath. To inspire someone else is to send the Spirit into. The idea of spirit was a substitute for meaning for hundreds of years as the church developed. On average, we breathe in and out between 12 and 20 times per minute. That adds up to over 20,000 breaths per day. We use some of the exhales to talk, shout, laugh, cry, mutter to ourselves. yell at drivers, not me, but some of you might, and sing. When we sing, we breathe out a song. And songs have meaning. The hope, of course, is that the listener will then take in that meaning, take in that spirit. Prior to coming to FUS, I worked as a church musician for 8 congregations in a variety of faith traditions, UU, UCC, which stands for Unitarians Considering Christ, Disciples of Christ, Methodist, Episcopal, Lutheran, Catholic Church, Catholic Cathedral. If you count one-off gigs, says the life of a musician, you can add Greek Orthodox, Baptist, Jewish, and Presbyterian to that list. But no matter the faith, the choirs at these places were open to anyone who cared to join, and most did not even require an audition. Choirs are full of volunteers. Volunteers who are looking to be inspired and to inspire others. In fact, most church and synagogue choirs are entirely volunteers, as is the case here at FUS. Singing in a worship choir is itself an act of contribution because rehearsing and participating in services takes time. Well, whether you're a visitor or have been coming for years, something first drew you to FUS. And as we've alluded to, you've identified 5 of the major reasons, and music was one of those. And if you have come back to FUS, then you must be getting something out of coming to FUS. And if you were asked what first brought you, you would have an answer. And if you were asked what brings you back, you would have an answer. And those questions are important, but I have another. I bet you're guessing that that question is, what do you give back to FUS? But it's not. It's, how would you like to join the choir? No, it's not that either. My question is, what do you give other than money to FUS? I want to challenge you to think about your stewardship as a portfolio. What if you considered your monetary contributions, your treasure, as only one way to contribute? I hope to convince you of the importance of distinguishing between contributions of treasure and contributions of time and talent. And I work with a lot of people in the church who contribute their time and talent every single week. And so I understand the value of that, and I experience it, and I'm grateful for it every single week. Every organization needs to pay the bills. Financial contributions will always be needed and appreciated, but so are contributions of time and talent. Being involved in music at FUS is certainly one way to contribute your time and talent, and if that is something you want to do, don't let anything hold you back. Let me know how I can help facilitate your participation in our music program. But if you don't want to be involved in music, then, and I get to say something controversial here today, then we don't want you to be. We want you to contribute your time and talent to something you are excited about. Because music isn't the only opportunity to volunteer and contribute. There are many opportunities to do that, and we need you. You don't have to be in a choir to be part of the chorus of life, but be part of the chorus of life.
Were you there that day? Reverend Doug and I were leading a service entitled, "Who is Our Neighbor?" And I was sharing a story with the children during the message for all ages. The book was about two neighbors named Yafa and Fatima. One was Jewish, the other was Muslim. We got to this line in the book where it said, Yafa prayed in the synagogue. Fatima prayed in the mosque. They both loved God, and they both loved to follow God's way. And while I was up there turning the page to get to the next spread, this maybe 3 or 4-year-old kiddo looks up at me and she sighs and she says, I miss God. I was rather taken aback, as I am at times when words of wisdom come from our very youngest. All I could think of to say was, yes, God is complicated. One of the aspects of this beloved community that I love, and that I see other people loving, are the opportunities to interact with people of many different generations. There are so few places in society these days where we have that chance for young people to talk to teens, and for teens to talk to elders, and for elders to talk to young adults, and for young adults to talk to middle-aged folks. Here at First Unitarian, we have that opportunity for singles and partners and families of every shape and size. And we help our very youngest to know that they are cared for by an entire community. As the African proverb supposedly goes, it takes a village to raise a child, and First Unitarian is one such village. The children's religious education program here is no small part of that village, for it has nearly 350 registered children and youth, nearly 90 teachers, and over 60 parent volunteers, not to mention the 8 teenagers who provide childcare for the kids in the nursery. I am grateful for these structured children's religious education classes. They help our children and youth make connections within their generation and cohort. And they help those same kids learn how to trust adults who are not part of their family. These opportunities to make relationships within and across generations is definitely something worth celebrating. I would have loved to have had a conversation with that kiddo, you know, the one who missed God, to find out what she meant. What was she thinking about? What was she missing? So if you see her, let her know. I still have something to learn from her.
These are the words of Margaret Kipe. The journeys of our lives are never fully charted. There come to each of us deserts to cross, barren stretches where the green edge on the horizon may be our destination, or an oasis on our way, or a mirage that beckons only to leave us lost. When fear grips the heart, or despair bows the head, may we bend as heart and head lead us down to touch the ground beneath our feet. May we scoop some sand into our hands and receive what the earth would teach us. It holds the warmth of the sun when the sun has left our sight, as it holds the cool of the night when the stars have faded. Hidden among its grains are tiny seeds, at rest and waiting, dormant yet undefeated. Desert flowers, they endure, moistened by our tears and by the rains which come to end even the longest drought. They send down roots and they bloom. May we believe in those seeds and in the seeds within us. May we remember in our dry seasons that we too are desert flowers. I remember the first time I visited the desert over 20 years ago now when my sister moved to Tucson. Coming from Pennsylvania, that landscape was unlike anything I had ever seen. I never knew there were so many shades of brown and orange and red, and how they could all change and seem to dance as the light shifted and moved. I remember thinking that it was quite absurd that there were things living in this place, with so much sun and so little water, with so little green and so many other shades of earth. We visited the Sonoran Desert Museum, and I was in awe of how that unbelievably beautiful place was teeming with life. There were reptiles and birds and flowers. There were desert flowers. Flowers that had set down roots in the harshest of places and learned how to bloom. This image has stuck with me because all of us have experienced desert times. Those times when the world shifts under our feet, when loss and despair settle into our hearts, when we wonder how we will figure out how to wake, to move, to live again. These are desert times, barren stretches filled with fear, anxiety, and dread. One of the most difficult pieces of the work I do here with all of you is when I see someone out in the community, at a store or the library, and they tell me that they have stopped coming here to this place because life has taken a turn, and they feel lost, and they decided it was best to stay away. "I'll be back when things are better," they always say. And it took me a few tries to learn how to respond. I used to say things like, "I understand, come back when you can." And now I say, "Please, come back now. Don't wait. Our community was made for these times." This is the time when you don't turn away, when you come in closer and you say, "I need help, this has happened, and I need to be with those who will listen, support, love me just the way I am in this moment with whatever has happened." This is the beauty of community such as ours. We come here to practice and live out who we want to be. People who gather in peace, gather in strength, gather in empathy and kindness and vulnerability, connection, risk, and caring. One of the largest supports in this work, and something I love about our life together, is our lay ministry program. Our lay ministers foster a sustaining sense of community within our congregation through a ministry of care. They are there for those who are experiencing the desert times, times of change, loss, illness, oftentimes offering practical assistance in transition. They share in moments of celebration and happiness. They reach out to those who are new and those who may be missed. Mostly, they listen. They listen to the stories of your lives. They discuss the complexities of this life we share. They walk with those who are hurting. They share in situations that require human kindness. It is a way they are remembering our connections, holding on to all that binds us, strengthening one another, and reminding us that we are not alone. Desert flowers. They endure through the most difficult of times. Moistened by tears, Margaret says, they send down roots and they bloom. May we believe in those seeds and in the seeds within us. May we remember that this is our way of being together, turning toward one another in those desert times, calling on this community of care and support, living this life as the desert flowers we truly are, helping each and every one to bloom.
Perhaps we have named something that is for you that space of gratitude in connection with FUS. Or perhaps it is something more personal that is your place and space. Either way, may the coming days do their generous work in you as you think about what it calls you to do in this time and for our future together. Every week when we move into the time of the offering, there is a similar spiritual discernment that happens. What are the gifts that you are aware of in your life now? And what is the truth of the life around and within you? And what is that intersection calling you to do, to spend of yourself, of your generosity? May we know this week that Centro Hispano is the recipient of 50% of our outreach offering. May we find that intersection of gratitude and generosity and give from that place as the offering is now given and received.
We join together each week, a community with minds that are open, hearts that are welcoming, and arms embracing. We lift up those whose lives are touched by sadness, by illness, by worry, and by loneliness. And we pray they find comfort, hope, and healing, strength in this community and in the larger world. We celebrate those whose lives are whole and well. May they share their strength with those in need and find warmth and love in the sharing of their spirit. This week, we remember those who have been impacted by gun violence, especially those of our neighbors in Milwaukee. And we take a moment also to silently reflect on our own lives and all those who are beloved within it, those who need our thoughts and healing prayers. May we remember that we are a part of a web of life that makes us one with all of humanity and all of the universe. May we be grateful for the miracle of life that we share and the hope that gives us the power to care, to remember, and to love. Blessed be.
As we leap into generosity with gratitude, we'd like to express our gratitude for the generosity of those who volunteer to help these services run smoothly. I'm talking about Abigail Musselman, who served as our greeter upstairs, Bisnitschke, Jim Jager, and Karen Jager, who have the very difficult task of serving as ushers for this unruly crowd, Lauren Manston, whom we will thank as we enjoy the coffee and hospitality that she is providing, Mary Savage, who made sure that our pulpit palms are vibrant and green, and somebody we have overlooked and neglected to thank, somebody who for the last 30 years has run our book booth, talking about Priscilla and Jerry Thane, 30 years of staffing that for us, so let's thank them this way. And they can recommend a couple good books, that's for sure. Just a couple more announcements before the standing ovation. One, the ministerial search, the search for our new settled minister is well underway, as you know. And there are some updates for you, and if you have questions, you can get answers by stopping in the Commons at the timeline display that you see there, and somebody from the Board of Trustees will be there to answer your questions about the status of the minister search. And speaking of transitions, we all have a transition that we need to be aware of on Saturday evening this coming weekend. Set your clock ahead 1 hour, because I'll be here at the 9 o'clock service, and I'll be bleary-eyed like many of you, but that's just a reminder to spring forward 1 hour Saturday evening. And speaking of reminders, as we leap into generosity, we are kicking off our annual stewardship campaign. And it's that campaign that makes it possible for us to enjoy all the things that we believe add value here at First Unitarian Society. The ministers told us today what they perceive as adding value and what they really appreciate about First Unitarian Society. And we heard about extra yarn and magic. And I was in the front row as the kids were responding to that story from Kelly, and I could just see it resonated from the very beginning of the story to the very end. And they indeed are our extra yarn and our magic. But there's a lot of other magic here too. And as Karen shared, it does take an entire village to make these things happen. So by functioning that way and showing our generosity as stewards of First Unitarian Society, we make it possible to enjoy services, programs for families, youth education programs so that young people will feel valued here, a world-class music program, a very active and highly regarded community outreach effort, and other things that make this a meaningful spiritual home for people of all ages. And as Doug mentioned in his observations across the country and working with a variety of congregations, he hasn't seen any congregation that has as many opportunities and activities and groups as we do to connect, to interact, to learn, and to grow. So we've got something pretty special here, and it does take all of us, an entire village, to make it happen. This year, it's going to take $1.17 million, almost $1.2 million of our collective generosity to continue these great programs and sustain them. The good news is, despite the fact that that's a pretty aspirational goal, $1.17 million, we're halfway there, and the campaign has just begun. One of the reasons we're halfway there is 239 members of FUS committed last year to multi-year pledging as sustaining stewards. And we also have attracted close to $100,000 in the first week of this campaign from early pledgers. So continue the generosity. The momentum is wonderful. We've got what you might call critical mass. That's not a Catholic term. And we're going to be celebrating every week our progress in that collective village-like extra yarn generosity. And we'll celebrate by awarding a restaurant gift card to one lucky person at each service who's participated already in the generosity of the stewardship campaign. Now, I can't tell you the name of the restaurant that those gift cards are going to be for, but I can tell you that the initials are Food Fight. And because of you, we're going to have a family party, a family celebration on Friday evening, March 27, right here. We want you to include the kids and all family members. There'll be activities for everybody, food and everything else. Again, Friday evening, March 27. We need you to respond and reserve your spot. There's no charge, but we need to know how many people are coming so that we know how much pizza and other items to order. So again, March 27, Friday evening, right here, our Because of You celebration, celebrating all the ways that we support each other and this organization, both our time and our talent, as well as our treasure. During the fellowship hour, we'll be offering questions and answers to any of your questions about the campaign, plus plenty of chocolate as you get ready for lunch. And that's lunch on your own. It's not lunch here. But I'll close by saying thank you for leaping together into generosity. It's going to take all of us, and we look forward to all of your participation in this effort. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Steve. You really are very sweet-smelling. Let us rise in body and or spirit to sing together our closing hymn, number 354, We Laugh, We Cry. Verses 1 and 4 only, please. We laugh, we cry, we live, we die, we dance, we sing our song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We need to feel the freedom just to have some time alone. But most of all, we need close friends we can call our very own. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give. We have our thoughts to receive, and we believe that sharing is an answer. Verse 4. We seek elusive answers to the questions of this life. We seek to put an end to all the waste of human strife. We search for truth, equality, and blessed peace of mind. And then we come together here to make sense of what we find. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a joy being together. And in our search for peace, maybe we'll finally see, even to question truly is an answer.
It is our work, shared with each other in covenant, that creates and sustains this beloved community.
We extinguish our chalice, but its light lives on in the directions we have chosen today.
The light of this faith lives on in us, together in our hearts, minds, bodies, and spirits. Amen, and blessed be. I invite you to take a seat and receive one more gift of music together in worship.